online, and just as a nice archive for those who couldn't attend, or if you wanted to kind of go back and hear maybe something that was presented today. We do record them, and we all put them we put them right here on our. We have our own kind of blog site. We call it Automation Solutions blog site, trctechfiles.com, and it's a new domain name for you guys that have been around for a while. trcnew.com still works. So we post videos, the presentations, any good pertinent resources around the topic, we post them there for you to go. Other things that you might find of interest there are we have info on various automation solutions like product portfolios, modernization solutions. We do have a blog of just writing about new products and services, as well as links to other services. So just invite you guys to check that resource out. And then, of course, we always talk about what's coming up. So we have our next couple months kind of lined out. So we kind of did a little different this year. We kind of go into rotation. So January was automation. This is a power topic here in February, and then industrial control in March, and we'll kind of repeat that. So we're kind of experimenting this year and see how that works. Needless to say, it's a little bit of a, perhaps it's a little bit of a, bragging rights in the office, who gets the most people. And I think right now, power is definitely in the lead in that space. But to my own defense, our January topic was on the day that it snowed and froze. So that did kind of hurt the turnout slightly. So Bill is up. Bill is up next in March with the industrial control topic. So the heat's on to see if he can get the audience to turn out. And then so March is the topic we have teed up so far is power supplies and UPS, so reliable power delivery solutions. We'll talk about FactoryTalk Links and OPC UA in April, and then we'll kind of go back to power in May with the IEC 61850. Also, we got a couple other kind of special events on the calendar that we wanted to kind of announce. One is tomorrow, so I know that's short notice for a lot of guys and girls in the room, but we're going to do a topic here again tomorrow on modernization solutions. I'll be joined by Chris Watkins, our solution architect out of Houston, for this guy. So this will be a nice kind of deeper dive into how you take a PLC5 to a ControlLogix, or how you take a MicroLogix to either compact or perhaps even a Micro 800. We're gonna have we're just kind of getting this going, so there's a big blank space there, but we're gonna have a webinar in March around lockout tagout solutions. And then the big guy, which you're gonna start to see a lot about, is April 26th. Rockwell Automation Solutions Expo. This will be at what they call the PTU, or the Process Training Unit, which is Trinova facility in Gonzales. And if you've never been in that facility, that's actually a picture of it. It's a big process skid, a working process skid, and it has all of Rockwell's plant PAX equipment on it. It has the IntelliCENTER MCC. It has drives and sensors and controllers, of course, and I/O and software. So it's one nice big showpiece. So we're calling it the Expo. So it's going to be a bit of a kind of an open house kind of thing. You come to their facility. We'll have tabletops. We'll have food and beverages throughout the day, and just a good opportunity to kind of come see something really working at a really cool facility. So you'll be seeing a lot on that in the very, very near future. And that's it for introductions before I turn over to Amanda. So again, today is IntelliCENTER MCC networking design, and just like Lance said earlier, the demo van's out in the warehouse after, if you didn't get to see it. And our guest speaker is Amanda. And Amanda, I apologize, I'm Krasowski. And I don't know if Joseph is on with us too.
No, it'll just be me today, thanks.
Okay, so just Amanda, all right. So I'm gonna make Amanda presenter, so just bear with me while I switch over the presentation, and we'll let Amanda introduce herself.
As I figure this out. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Sounds good. I'll have to pull this up really quick.
See your. Start to see your slide.
A white screen here. Does that look right?
Yep.
Okay.
We're good.
You'll continue to see a white screen. So as that happens, again, my name is Amanda Krasowski. You did great pronunciation of my last name, so thank you. So I sit up here in Milwaukee supporting the group here, part of the product management team. Joe Matthews, who was also mentioned, is my counterpart, and we aim to support, of course, we immediately think of the 2100 line, as well as, we have our NEMA 2100, 2500 for IEC, and also medium voltage as well. So what we have here today is actually a really great tool that you all can use, whether you are talking to a customer, you're training someone new, et cetera, et cetera. I like to go through this. It has guided audio. This is our IntelliCENTER interactive storyboard, which you can find on ab.com and on Noggin. So without further ado, I guess I'll get started right into this. I'll make sure that I pause for questions. You can see there are these 3 play buttons here. I'll try to pause after all of that happens, and we can take questions there, but I'm going to roll right with it. So in an introduction, it sounded like the familiarity with our Rockwell Automation and Allen Bradley products, specifically our Centerline portfolio of motor control centers, as well as IntelliCENTER, and the benefits that come with an integrated architecture in your connected enterprise, is generally familiar with this group. So I'm excited to kick off really just on that note, and really talk about the value there, and what you can find in the innards of our IntelliCENTER MCC here too. All right. Need a single industrial network across your entire plant. Well, of course, there's a lot of information that are coming from these devices, and not just within one bucket, one section, but from a single room, from multiple rooms. What does this mean? So if we have a single network across an entire plant, it is a bit easier to maintain. Your network requirements could be satisfied by the Ethernet IP and Ethernet Industrial Protocol, Communications Protocol, which is an open network. It's flexible and supports multiple topologies, has high availability, so we have fault tolerance, it's easy to maintain, it's secure because we have managed switches, and you saw in that last animation, we can remote connect. So we have chosen Ethernet IP as the standard for our IntelliCENTER motor control centers, as well as Ethernet IP being an open standard as well, because again, it's a flexible and scalable topology that you can utilize to securely monitor, connect to, aggregate information. Adjectives continue here of all the assets in your plant. We find this as a maintainable and flexible network because of the way that we have routed our network cabling within our MCC. To give those who may be unfamiliar a very brief overview, if you can see my mouse, my pointer, we have our power control room with our MCC sections down in that bottom right-hand corner, and a variety of intelligent motor control devices within each section, sections 1, 2, and 3. These green lines all aggregate up into a managed Ethernet switch, in this case, the Stratix 5700. So we call this point-to-point connections of our intelligent motor control devices up into our Stratix switch as a star topology. If you have your switch in the center, you have all these spokes kind of coming off that focus there. We have a linear topology supported from switch to switch, essentially trunk to trunk. And then we also support a sense of redundancy, which is very important as we find in control systems. That's why we have, a bypass and whatnot. We find this to be the case with our industrial networks and the products that support that. So we have a redundant topology here, redundant Ethernet protocol. So that promotes ease of maintenance, expandability, quick replacement. Just to give you a little insight on that, it's a common adapter, common cable, your CAT cables there, familiar with Ethernet, and as long as the space factor is withholding for your devices, you can essentially plug and play, adjust where appropriate within your IntelliCENTER MCC. With your Stratix switch able to support those types of connections and not limiting in terms of security, which I'll go through in a little bit, this is very easy to do. Very easy to move around because plants can change and functionality can change. It can expand, it can decrease in size. That's what we're here for. And I think something very true to the Centerline portfolio of MCCs is that we do pride ourselves in essentially our backwards compatibility. We do try to support that, you can have a Centerline MCC 30 years old and we still try to make sure everything is outfitted appropriately as we introduce new products and new architectures within it. Again, that expandability. When we ship our MCCs, we do try to make sure that you're not purchasing a lot of excess equipment that you don't need. As a part of this initiative that we took in our plants, our Ethernet switch optimization project, we ensure that the right port count is appropriate for the amount of devices connecting amongst sections. We can have a switch support up to 9, 10-ish sections, and you can have an MCC support up to 10 switches in a single uplink. So coming all of this together into one Stratix switch, say bring that to your ControlLogix Compact Logix processor. This term thrown around as well, it's our automated device configuration, which is enabled by a variety of our Allen Bradley and Rockwell Automation intelligent motor control devices. What this is if you have a failure, we can allow you to replace that, and the new device can assume the properties of the old. So in this video, we have a PowerFlex 755, which is enabled by this technology. E300 overload relay is also one of those. If we have a failure and the switch is able to bring that port persistence of assigning a device plug to that port, the right IP address, and the device is ready to take it, we can throw that on there, assign a new IP address, flash it the right firmware, and then configure it appropriately so that you can get your application essentially back up and running. Again, this is supported by a variety of our intelligent motor control devices, though not all, but we find this to be definitely a strong suit within this, this expandability and maintainability of our MCCs, and especially when you operate within the Studio 5000 Logix Designer environment. Again, I mentioned that we have a variety of topologies that we support within our MCCs, tested and true by our team, product validation and test team, just the whole shebang up here. The beauty of this is that we don't require additional hardware in order to enable these advanced switch features. When you receive your MCC, your Stratix 5700 switches are enabled with Express Setup, meaning that is ready to go with whatever type of configuration and advanced switch settings you'd like to put on your Stratix switch. So again, one of them being resilient Ethernet protocol, where we can have that redundancy as we look more into maybe a distributed type of network. You want to reach out to a different area of your plant floor, and then yet another area of your plant floor, and aggregate that all up into where you want to visualize and virtualize these types of services, and very too. Cool thing about that is it also maintains the ADC functionality that I just talked about. Just to go over this once more, it might be a little bit easier to visually see this as opposed to me talking a little about it more. For those of you familiar with our managed switches, there are a variety of advanced switch features that are able to be enabled within that network and within that device. In terms of segregating areas of your plant network, again, I mentioned you might want to control and segregate what you have in one control room or one floor or one plant area versus another. There might be a lot of devices. There might be security involved in that. We use virtual local area networks as a part of that, which enhances that network security. You limit the devices that you can communicate with and that communicate to one another. Network segmentation is vital in that sense. If you have a lot of devices, that's a lot of traffic coming through. And so not as it only a security feature, but it really is more of an efficient way to handle all of that data and information coming in. So what control do you have over other switch ports? We have advanced port control. So essentially, the Stratix 5700 and our managed switches can understand what's connected to it in each port. So DHCP per port persistence allows that essentially an assigning of an IP address to a device that is connected to that port. So you might have heard of BootP enabled devices. That kind of happens. Well, that happens usually when you have a device come straight out of the factory. It's ready to go, ready to be assigned. Essentially, its identity within all of this. DHCP per port will allow those BootP enabled devices to be, once they're connected to that port, to be to assume a particular IP address. Port enabling, again, enables actually which ports are accessible to use on the switch. You might want to limit the amount. Say you're looking to expand later, you want to reserve those ports. That's a good way to communicate with essentially the rest of your workforce there, just as to control your environment. How do you optimize those port configurations? And we keep talking about security. Smart ports and SIP control are important in this realm. I especially think smart ports. Smart ports, when you go into the device properties of your Stratic switch, say you're online and you can look at that device. And I should mention that on this online web page is a functionality enabled for quite a variety of our intelligent motor control devices just by simply typing in their IP address into your web browser, which is great. So anyway, we have these smart ports, and for each of your active ports, you can assign whether it's a device. So you want your E300 connected to port 4. You'll assign port 4 as an automation device smart port. If you only want, say, your desktop computer to be connected to a port and maybe not an automation device, you can assign that too. It's a really neat feature, and it's really easy to configure as well. And it also looks at that as a part of, it helps assign those roles and speaks what it needs to be understood through that MAC ID filtering. All of our devices come with its specific, machine identification. It's actual device hard-coded MAC ID. So I will pause here for any questions. That is, what we talk about this network area here. And actually, I should add that, IntelliCENTER really is this three-legged stool. You have your intelligent network, which I talked about here, and we have two other legs of the stool that we'll be getting into, and I'd be glad to share. But anyway, do any of you have any questions over the phone?
Question here in the room, just we have a microphone so Amanda can hear you, and then anybody on the web, just raise your hand too on the web, and I can unmute your line. So, or chat, put in the chat window as well. So we'll just wait a second and see. All right, looks good.
All right.
Quiet.
All right. Cool. All right, I've influenced you guys, I guess. So we'll move on to the second part, which can only be possible if you have the intelligent networks, or actually I think they work very well hand in hand. And that's our intelligent devices. So how can your MCC improve your plant's operations? Again, we're familiar with the Centerline MCC. It sounds like you have the MCC van up and ready to be explored. I think that's a great opportunity. In fact, you're going to see a lot of the features, both hardware and software, within that van. So hopefully at least some of this will ring true in a little bit of time when you go check that out after this call. So wonderful benefits, of course, to our Centerline MCC. Again, I emphasize that type of backwards compatibility because we have been a long-withstanding business as a part of Rockwell Automation, our motor control centers, and our Centerline portfolio of motor control centers. If you seek more information about, say, our arc-resistant enclosures, we have Arc Shield, we have other safety features like Secure Connect. I'd argue that IntelliCENTER really helps feed into that safety mindset. Common bus, there's a variety of information there that will definitely be happy to be shared. I could direct you more to the product management individuals that are in charge with our NEMA and IEC Centerline portfolio. Right now, we'll focus more on IntelliCENTER, but I'd be happy to feed any specific questions to them as well, or if I can answer them in any time here. So, in the beginning, I mentioned that IntelliCENTER is kind of this middle layer that helps support our Centerline portfolio, which includes up to medium voltage. We have NEMA and our IEC products in low voltage realm as well. It's reliable and robust, and again, supported by that Ethernet IP infrastructure and that network architecture. These devices definitely support the same. So we ensure that the cabling is robust and noise resistant to the best of its ability as well, and all of our intelligent motor control devices, our E300s, our PowerFlex drives. So, I should clarify, our architecture and component class drives, our smart soft starters, the power monitors, the list goes on, go through a rigorous set of product validation, conformance testing, et cetera, in order to make sure that they can be thrown into any one of our buckets, our sections here. These intelligent motor control devices, again, I mentioned, include our PowerFlex family of drives. So our 753 and 755 is part of our architecture class drives, variable frequency drive family. We have our component class 523 and 525. Intelligent overload relays on Ethernet IP include our E300. We also have the Power Monitor 5000, the SMC Flex, and then the list continues. Something that's active within my group here in Milwaukee is that we're constantly ensuring that we are up to date on technology, and that as a solution and essentially a system provider that we continuously interact with specific groups. So actually looking at your timeline of some of the topics coming up are, I think of IEC 61850 and, the PTU and whatnot, that a lot of these concepts are definitely going to show up there, and that MCCs, especially IntelliCENTER MCCs, play a very large role in a lot of those areas. So, just to touch back on the switch concept again, the switch itself does handle the smart infrastructure or the intelligence of the Ethernet IP network. And then I did touch base on that. It is an intelligent device itself. Network health management, I described that we have a variety of supported switching protocols to support your architecture. We want it to be resilient and flexible, and also recover quickly, because in the event that there's a power loss or something changes or you need to add on, having the scalability and dependability of really what the backbone of the connection to your device is extremely important. And to monitor that continual maintenance of the health of those devices is something that the Stratix switch can offer too. The beauty of using Ethernet IP and the benefits of a managed switch such as the Stratix 5700 is that this really plays into that IT-OT convergence topic that is so widely known, and that really feeds into the whole connected enterprise strategy. Our Stratix switches are based on systems, and this is very, very familiar to a lot of IT professionals as well, but also has in place within our operational technology realm. This marries the two together and is dependable and easy to troubleshoot and secure in those ways, because it can be understood and translated by a variety of groups here. Again, the Stratix switch provides essentially a central location to have system logging and an area for troubleshooting and detection of other even physical maladies that could happen to your system. Network and port traffic, again, as we have an MCC or a lineup that could have hundreds of devices, we need to prioritize that traffic and understand what's most important for us and get it quickly. Enabling some of those advanced features that I spoke of it definitely gives you that a little bit of a faster time to market, in a sense. Optimizing those ports, optimizing those attached devices. There's a variety of these advanced features. I'd be glad to share the publication that kind of describes what is encompassed by Stratix 5700. Probably out of the realm of what I could speak to today, but I'd be glad to send along material afterwards for anyone who's interested. And then finally, I mentioned VLANs again, and we have the smart ports network functionality, so it's secure with all of those devices. And again, our intelligent motor control devices, those drives, those E300s, understand essentially this language. They can be placed on a network that allows for smart ports to do what they need to do, because they are automation devices. They have MAC addresses. They can be put on a VLAN, and ultimately it's the Stratix switch allows the platform to be able to interact intelligently with all those devices. Most importantly, the concept of, I can show you pretty pictures all day, but what does this mean to, the power connections as well as the network connections? We find that many customers who are familiar with our centerline portfolio or MCCs in general are well acquainted with hardwired options. From a communication perspective, I immediately think device net, where you have your CAN bus protocol, CAN high, CAN low on the same wire as the network power that's coming to your device. Well, we do require the 24 VDC power as well for our Ethernet devices, just that we require a power supply for that specifically, and that we pertain specific Ethernet IP connection over Ethernet IP, CAT cabling, our Ethernet networks there. So this is true for both the Centerline 2100 and the Centerline 2500. The only differences really are, well, they're due to the conformance standards set in place physically for both NEMA and IEC. But you can have the cable routing from essentially a vertical perspective, vertical wireway as we like to call it, and can have that convergence to your plant-wide Ethernet network as we aggregate the cabling and information up to the managed Stratix switches at the top, as you can see, with optional power adapters that we can throw in there too, as you can see. I mentioned that our cabling is 600 volt rated. We go through extensive fast transient burst immunity, electromagnetic conformance testing on all of our products, as well as our products in lieu and in line with our communication networks, because we want to make sure that we provide a reliable network connection. And we don't offer the most efficient. So we, with our 600 volt rated cabling, it's designed to be used with these, alongside these higher voltage power cables that could be coming in those top or bottom wireways, or alongside your MCC there too. I speak more of the Stratix switch here. Where can it be placed? And those who have ordered or interacted with our MCCs, we can throw almost just about anything in there. We have a very dedicated force of application engineers to make sure that each bucket is designed to the best of our ability to complement those needs. So as we introduce a new device for communication protocol, as opposed to control, space is absolutely an option, but also kind of what we do with that space and how physically that layout makes sense is very important. So when it comes to switch mounting flexibility, we have two options. It could be unit mounted or horizontal wireway mounted. The unit mounted, we take specifically a unit, a bucket, and we are able to maximize the space that your power cables might come through in those horizontal wireways. We're also able to leverage a bit more port capacity for that Stratix 5700 because we have a little bit more room. The Stratix comes in a 20 and a 10 port variety. You can tag both those on and have 30, and so we're able to do that with a unit mounted switch. Even better if you're really focused on kind of that in-person troubleshooting, we can have the ease of maintenance with the viewing window to see what's going on, and you can absolutely know where the switch is, top or bottom unit, if you need to access it for maintenance. But we understand that might not always be ideal, and the case is very dependent, and it's inappropriate for us to say that we have a one-size-fits-all solution. So we found that the unit-mounted and also providing the horizontal wireway-mounted capability of switch mounting flexibility was appropriate here. And when we have a switch in the horizontal wireway, or you can really maximize the space that you have in your subsequent sections to, if space is an option for whatever configuration you might have in those buckets, or maybe how large your frame, whatever number drive is within that area too. Connection flexibility. I mentioned a bit about generally what this digital kind of network architecture really means, and just a bit about physically what that means. I mentioned our top with the Stratix, but what this really comes down to physically is a home run cabling type of connection. You can trace E300 that it is plugged in and specifically plugged back in to the specific Stratix port, and then so on and so forth. it's really great to enhance those troubleshooting efforts. When it comes to quoting and building an MCC, our tools are able to specifically calculate the appropriate Ethernet cabling lengths to get to each of those devices, which is fantastic. We've got a lot of smart people doing that. But additionally, I mentioned that you might want the flexibility or the functionality to take out a device or throw a new one in. We have these Ethernet adapters that can be put into that vertical wireway where you can have specific static locations to connect and disconnect, typically shorter Ethernet cables, and then also change Ethernet IP enabled devices amongst one another. You can still troubleshoot. We still provide that information. I'll get to that in just a second, but it's still it's appropriate from the safety standpoint as well, because you don't have to enter the unit. You can troubleshoot and look at communications from a physical connection perspective right from those Ethernet adapters. Additional flexibility, couple switch options. I mentioned that we have a 10-port and a 20-port switch, so this is our 20 port here. 10, of course, is shortened. We have the ability of light or full firmware for our Stratix documentation, laying out all the different configurations that you can have via light or full firmware. That typically light or full will determine essentially what capabilities of advanced switch features you're looking for in your Stratix switch. But I would keep in mind that some of these features might require an extra FPGA in the back, so a little bit more space required. Throw that in unit and not a horizontal wireway. But again, if you have any specific questions about that, we have our application engineers and just a whole team dedicated where we can make sure we address that appropriately on a per order basis. But this is the list here is not limited to what I have here. Again, I can gladly provide documentation on that. And I mentioned the viewing window. We can have easy connections with an I/O terminal block, and then also appropriate door latching, a locking latch to physically secure that switch. Switch groups. So lineups can be really extensive, and sometimes the concern comes down to, all right, what's being thrown into which shipping split, of course, is the question. But ultimately, how do I connect all of this together, especially when you're so familiar from your wiring diagram from a specifically hardwired conventional perspective. What we try to enable with this, again, through our Ethernet switch optimization here is that we give you the appropriate amount of switch, but also a switch can support devices across shipping splits, and that we also explicitly define where connections need to be made, especially from switch to switch in that linear topology type of connections. But I do want to emphasize that when you have an IntelliCENTER Ethernet IP MCC come from our factory, regardless of what shipping split it's in, we determine the appropriate connections. All devices get an identity within the network, on the network, so they get their IP address, they get their subnet mask, and all connected to the switch. Better, and now as a recent addition to enhancements we're making to our plants, is that you'll receive these devices again already on your to the latest firmware version as validated by our product compatibility and download center. So we're really trying to add value and normalize your experience here in those physical connections and in that device identity, so that when you have separate switch groups and separate shipping splits, that if you just have to go through a couple of network connections in order to verify connections among the lineup. And that could be a lot of information. So we have our IntelliCENTER documentation. We have labels with specific, coding there, I guess you can say, on the label indicating, what switch group is in, where this device is coming from. Is this a, home cabling? Do you have an adapter? Is it a patch? Where is it located, et cetera, et cetera. And we even do that from switch to switch. So it's not just which device. We reference. addition to that, we model the whole overview of your network connection in a network table and a network diagram. So you have a network table, again, laid out per device catalog number with its IP address and its subnet mask, as well as additional information, including the cable label that I just mentioned. We can also look at total length of the cabling of that Ethernet cable as well. And then I mentioned the network diagram. If you want a more visual way of looking at that, we have all that information there. Again, with the cable label right there, the type of device. Again, this is our static switch up here, describing specifically which unit and IP address, subnet mask, uplink ID. A couple ways viewing this. And we pride ourselves in having all of this tangibly, printed out. You can find this, within your MCC or on the back of the switch unit door. But the next thing I actually want to go into is, how these cable benefits are also relayed into that digital realm within our software. Before I roll into, anyone have any questions about our intelligent devices and that physical hardware there?
Just again, for our web audience, feel free to either enter a question in the question panel or raise your hand there. I can unmute your line. We actually have a question in the room. Just speed the microphone. I can hear you.
What's the difference between Modbus TCP/IP and Ethernet IP?
Great question. Ethernet IP, we call this, well, not that we call this, it is a standard unmodified Ethernet network based on, IEEE and IEC and whatnot standards. And, that basically when it comes down to understanding differences in these types of modified or Ethernet protocols, it really is dependent on the structure of that packet, of the packet that is sending that contains information that's going from device to whatever, as well as I would call it the governing body or the governing type of device that oversees the network. So when we have Ethernet IP, we have a standard, again, packet that leverages TCP/IP as well as SIP protocols, and with that overseer of say a managed switch in a sense. My familiarity and knowledge of Modbus TCP/IP is that it is not standardized in the same way that Ethernet IP is. It is not particularly always used as an IT familiar type of network. And I have to check back with you on this too, but what we often find with, say, Modbus and Profinet and whatnot is that the type of network traffic prioritization, which is based on the network packet, is different than Ethernet IP. But if you would to explore this further, I'd be happy to follow up to make sure that I give you the most appropriate answer, because at the top of my head, I'm drawing further than that. But I mean, does that answer your question a bit?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Yeah.
So,
go
oh, any others?
No, I think that was it. So you can keep on.
Good question. Good. I mean, and again, it looks like that you guys are going to have a topic coming up on IEC 61850. That is also a standard unmodified Ethernet protocol. And actually, so I can touch base on this a little bit too in this next section. But IEC 61850 is definitely seen within our power and electrical distribution types of systems. So say transformers and switchgear and those types of protection relays. And Rockwell Automation and Allen Bradley products are mostly focused on communicating on Ethernet IP. But with a simple gateway, we can actually aggregate that type of information and bring it up on one seamless platform and one seamless, we call our industrial protocol as we use Ethernet IP. But again, we can bring what we call our own process and control automation system with that power and distribution system. So if any of you have heard of our Intelligent Package Power initiative, that is almost exactly what it is, and we have the infrastructure to support that, as well as the a recent launch that we had late last year before Automation Fair. It is our IntelliCENTER Integration Unit. So that's an actual physical hardware box provided by the IntelliCENTER Technology Group here that serves as a gateway for that IEC 61850 type of protocol. But it's always good that we make sure that we are up to date on all the standardizations and up and coming technologies that concern networking. So I just wanted to reiterate that was a good question, and these are things that we continually think about and also are as enhancements to our portfolio. So ultimately, wherever this is coming from, as I mentioned, our IPP initiative with information, say on IEC 61, or just your intelligent devices within your IntelliCENTER MCC, how are you going to monitor and manage all of that information across potentially hundreds of devices in extensive lineups in an existing or new facility? I mean, the list goes on. How are you going to manage all of that? Again, before entering this call, I got you all are excited and are pretty well versed on the integrated architecture message and the connected enterprise as it pertains to Rockwell Automation, and of course that involves Industry 4.0, et cetera, et cetera. So we the first step is to have those intelligent devices that can provide you that type of information, and we have that. Again, I mentioned our E300s, our PowerFlex drives. You need the mode in which you can get that information from one place to another. And that's where I mentioned our intelligent networks. And then finally, again, what do you do with that information? Let's put it all in one area and one seamless platform that you can interact with all of that. Rockwell Automation prides ourselves on that premier integration aspect, and IntelliCENTER software is not out of the picture on that one. In fact, we do enable that most specifically. We have that virtual representation of your MCC lineup within our IntelliCENTER MCC. When you receive your IntelliCENTER MCC from our factories on Ethernet IP, again, I mentioned that devices are identified on the network. They are connected. You have those switches. You have the documentation. Then this is all facilitated within our software as well. We have the data, you to virtualize all of that tangible information. On a software platform. Real-time analysis and analytics, even in the descriptive sense, is very important. You can trend all that information, and you can access documentation appropriate to your MCC and your devices as well. So first and foremost, the system view. Where are your devices located? Where are your sections? What are those devices? We have our system view, sometimes called our elevation view to some, that provide just that readily available descriptive analytics, I would say, type of information of each of our devices within each unit and section location. So we have a legend here, again, for each device in each area where we can designate if there's a fault or warning, or if everything's just peachy keen and we're running and ready to go. Even a comm loss, which is extremely important. So you can gain a quick snapshot of what's going on in your MCC and determine if you need to take further action and navigate to those devices specifically. As you navigate to those devices specifically, you have a monitor view of each device. Here I'm showing the E300 overload relay. Here you have its own realm and its own point of view of changing that device information that you want to receive. Understanding what your I/O data looks like, what your limits are, your high highs, your low lows, etc., as well as parameters that are particularly important for you to look at. So we have FLA setting, trip class, trip enable, warning enable, information like that. And again, trending that information in real time. We can also visualize that information a little bit differently if you look at analog dials. We try to cater to the variety of users and roles that would be interacting with the MCC. Again, lots of devices in an MCC. So we make sure that we provide that documentation pertaining to your MCC and the devices within it. That includes drawings and manuals of, again, the devices that you find within the MCC that was shipped. We also have a spare parts list, which has been by our group, based on the devices that you do have within your MCC, what would be recommended to have additionally in stock, and what that part number is and what the description is, in case in the unfortunate circumstance that there does need to be a replacement, or even just understanding the future of where you need to be in terms of asset management and reliability and things of that nature. Our devices, again, having this intelligent backbone to them, and I know I'm throwing this term around so much, but truly the standards that have been put in place by our different product groups here, whether it's your overload relays, your power monitors, your power flex variable frequency drives, the growing need to realize this information on a common platform and common software platform has been extremely important. And providing all of that information to have that self-awareness of the device is explicitly shown within our IntelliCENTER software, and also thus within our Studio 5000 environment, because we want to make sure that you can take that preemptive action to investigate those potential issues, not just do it from a reactive and corrective standpoint, but most importantly, be proactive on that sense. So again, I want to emphasize that this is the self-awareness of the device in terms of this type of maintenance and this type of analytics. Although, I will say that, to have an IntelliCENTER MCC internally and externally connected is the first step in order to achieve additional analytics and other platforms that are offered by Rockwell Automation's portfolio of all of that. And again, so I mentioned the Premier integration aspect. So IntelliCENTER software can be standalone, but it can also have the ability to interact with other areas of our software suite, I guess you could say. So IntelliCENTER Energy, if you are looking to have a variety of power monitors and display, key information from, that power monitoring and energy management system within your MCC, IntelliCENTER Energy, as you seamlessly integrate your IntelliCENTER MCC with, factory talk energy metrics. So that is its own software. Enabled by an Ethernet IP connection to those devices, you can connect specifically to the factory talk energy metric server. It would be included within your IntelliCENTER MCC order. And in order to import that information over there, it's just a couple of clicks, as you saw within that menu information over there. You can trend that information and look at it on a date-by-date basis, daily, weekly, monthly, and looking at those parameters, simultaneously, cross-functionally, in a sense, in order to log and keep track of all that information. And then, of course, you can trend this information, as I said, on a date-by-date basis. And that becomes really important when you want to understand, when should you be running your MCC? Power and utility costs are always a concern. This is just a step in that direction to utilize that type of technology and, our software and hardware that enable this. But I think most importantly, and most familiar to everyone in this integrated architecture message is Studio 5000 Logix Designer Environment Premier Integration. Those of you that have interacted within Logix Designer, it's a lot of bang for your buck, quite honestly. But of course, what could be concerning is if you have a lot of devices to import within your I/O tree, that's a lot of time and effort. And with a lot of devices, how do you keep track of all that information? Leverage the add-on profiles that are innate to these devices, and supported by Rockwell Automation as a whole, and we can keep track of those changes and importing device information through our integration assistant via IntelliCENTER. Again, a couple clicks. So again, leveraging your Logix type of controller, and again that Logix Designer, you can use Premier Integration and the integration assistant to bring your information from IntelliCENTER software into your I/O tree of your Studio 5000 project. So here, this video is just going through the handful of clicks that you'll need to take that information and bring it into a Studio 5000 project. So once we load all that information, you also have indication of your specific networks and also the naming convention of those and to I guess nomenclature in a sense appropriately. Also appropriately indicating which devices are part of which, say, Ethernet card within your chassis, your Logix chassis. Again, the network that it's found upon can help the integration assistant best figure out where that is thrown in your I/O tree. And if you were to do that by hand, you'd have to right-click your I/O tree, choose device or discover device, go through all of that one by one. And here we have that all imported in one fell swoop here. Again, in your I/O tree here on the left-hand side, with all the appropriate tag information found within your control, then to be leveraged, say, in your programs and your routines. You still have the same functionality that you would find within Studio 5000 and Logix with data types and add-on instructions, add-on profiles. Say you are looking to have this in a process type of application, we have specific intelligent motor control devices enabled for as a plant PAX ready unit, like our E300s. Dependent on operating mode, you can have faceplates. Even better, I mentioned IPP. We have faceplates available for some of those third-party devices, like our transformers, our switch gear. Again, third-party, but you still have the same look and feel as you would a Rockwell automation device. Because again, we realize that the importance is definitely on of course, what your devices are doing within your buckets and your sections there, but ultimately what is the system value and what is your system and solution as an MCC functioning within the important parts of your plant, because ultimately packaging that solution together is what we do best here in our low voltage motor control center group here at Rockwell Automation. And I think I'm super close on time here. We have about 5 minutes left for questions, though we had some time in between here. Are there any other questions within the room before we open it up on the phone?
Nope. No questions at the moment. Online, guys, like I said, feel free to raise your hand or put a question into the question panel, and I can read that out, or I can unmute your line if you want to ask it live. So just we'll give those online guys a minute to wake up out there and hit the button. And I should say, oh yeah. I should say that everything Amanda just did today is actually an interactive online demo that is totally available for everybody to see. It's out there. I'll send the link out as part of the follow-up for this. So everything she did, all these little fancy animations and videos and all that information are out there. So it's a pretty cool little online demo. So we'll share that with everybody. And,
absolutely, and it has audio to accompany it too. So if you're looking for words like I was at a couple points, never fear, we have a script to go along with that too.
With the fancy professional music in the background too, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
So, all right, it looks like everyone is satisfied. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up a few minutes early. For the web audience, as always, we appreciate you guys joining us remotely. And for those who came out today live, thanks for taking the time to join us. Don't forget the van outside if you did not get to see it. Lance will be happy to meet you out there and show you around the van. So Amanda, thank you again for a nice presentation, and we'll go ahead and conclude.
Thank you all.
Right.
I really appreciate it, and feel free, send out my contact information if anyone has any additional questions beyond the scope of this, or if it comes up to you as you're driving home today. Really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. All right.